Hey, Jamie here, and welcome to part 3 of Module 7, where again we're breaking down professional networking. And in part 1, we covered the approach, having a relationship-driven approach to networking. And then in part 2, we broke down how to actually implement that approach. So how to systematically reach out to people using your 4 tools, which were LinkedIn, your networking tracker, the outreach messages, and then of course you have email. And then how do you prepare for those conversations, do the research, come up with personalized, thoughtful questions. And then we also talked about how to lead the conversation, what to actually say at what time so that it's totally unawkward and you have a great first impression and you start that relationship off strong. So now in this part 3, we're really focusing on how do you consistently build and strengthen a deep relationship with someone. So rather than just talking to someone once and then never talking to them again, which a lot of people do, how do you stay in touch? How do you consistently build that relationship? And again, remember, relationships, whether it's a professional relationship or a personal relationship, whether it's intimate or social or even just a friendship, all relationships fundamentally work the same way because it's human to human, it's person to person. We behave similarly, whether it's personal or professional. So when we can understand how to build a personal relationship, which many of us know how to do, we're not going to date somebody by going out with them once. You got to consistently meet with someone, and you're not going to be a friend with someone if you only talk to them once. Well, similarly, in professional networking, you're not going to have a professional relationship with someone that's meaningful and impactful and leads to opportunities if you only talk to them once and there's no relationship. So we're going to cover understanding the power and the importance of staying top of mind with someone and how to actually go about doing so. We're going to cover understanding the recommended relationship building cadence, and I'll explain what a cadence is, and then how to lead a second networking call. And that's a point where a lot of people get stuck on the second call because in their mind they're like, well, on the first call we already talked about everything. We talked about the background, we talked about their job, their position, the company, whatever. And so a lot of people really don't know what to talk about in the second call. So we'll break down how to approach that, and then also when to actually ask for help from someone that you have a relationship with. So I know that we've covered this multiple times, but I can't stress how important it is. Relationships are built over time because of conditioned references. Reference stacking, reference building, one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. That's how you build a relationship. It's the exact same way as conditioning a belief. So we must have multiple positive interactions with someone in order to actually form a strong relationship. And because of that, it takes time to build trust and rapport with someone because you need to build the references. So visually what that looks like again is because we know that trust and rapport are beliefs and building a relationship is really nothing more than a belief system, it's built the same way. So you're going to have a first impression or a first reference, and then you're going to have multiple reference points or multiple interactions with someone. Then you're going to have even more references or interactions with somebody. And then eventually you have a deep web of experience with someone. And so what that means is across a period of time and how many references you've had with somebody, how many experiences and interactions you've had will determine the strength of the relationship. So if you've only ever talked to someone once, you probably really don't have that deep of a relationship or no relationship at all. But when you've come across someone, and let's say you've spoken to someone two to 10 times, maybe you view them as an acquaintance and maybe they view you as an acquaintance or maybe a friend. But after you've talked to somebody 10 to 100 times, I mean, that's a lot of conversations. That is, you know someone pretty well. And that's usually a colleague or a friend. But then, and think of that friend as someone who really is a part of your core friend group. But then anybody who's passed 100 plus references, that's someone you know very well. And that's obviously your family members. Of course, it's going to be your best friends or close friends growing up. But then it's also going to be professionally the people who you trust the most, the people you feel like you know them through and through. Those are people that are deeply trusted colleagues, where maybe you even expose several thoughts like, hey, I'm thinking of leaving the company. Well, you wouldn't say that to someone that you're not that close to. So now when we think about how to leverage this in professional networking, what we're aiming for is this second point. The point where someone feels like they know you at least enough to feel like, yeah, I kind of know that person. I kind of understand where they're coming from, who they are. And when someone feels that you're an acquaintance or that they sort of know you, all of a sudden you've entered their world of someone that they know, they like, and they trust. And that is so important because, again, people help people who they know, like, and trust. So we're aiming for this second tier, this 2 to 10 references, call it. So in order to do that, you must continue interacting with the clients that the contacts that you're building your relationships with. But you don't want to have to call them every single time. Nobody you network with is going to appreciate you calling them every week or calling them every 2 weeks or even calling them every 3 weeks. Eventually they'll be like, oh my gosh, this person is such a burden. Like, yes, I want to help them, but I don't have time to talk to them every 2 weeks over the phone for an hour or 30 minutes. So instead, what we're going to do is we have to have a cadence of posting and conversations, posting and conversations. And so the reason we want to do that is posting will allow you to stay top of mind between conversations. And I'll talk about what that means, but first I want to give a really simple example. So take a look at this advertisement. What is this? What is it? What does it mean? What is it telling you to do? What is it saying? So first off, what company is responsible for this advertisement, this billboard ad? Okay, so you probably immediately know from looking at this, it's McDonald's. How do you know that that's McDonald's? It's not telling you it's McDonald's. But you know, probably from the golden arch on the right side, that that's a zoomed in part of the M for McDonald's. Why is this ad effective? It literally says nothing. There's no food or anything displayed. All it says is on your right. Traditionally, if you were to look at this ad, you'd say it's a horrible ad. It tells me nothing. It shows me nothing. I know nothing about this company, about what it offers, about anything like that. But this was actually one of their most successful advertising campaigns. Why? Because McDonald's understands, their marketing team understands human psychology. They understand belief systems, and they understand how to influence people's beliefs, resurface those beliefs, and then get people to make their own decision on those beliefs and take action. This ad was genius because they completely hacked our belief systems and how we make decisions. So really what it's saying is it's reminding us, hey, we exist. And McDonald's team, they're not trying to convince you of anything. Instead, they're resurfacing your previously conditioned beliefs. So when you see this, you immediately, let's pretend you're driving on the highway and you have another 3 hours ahead of you driving, and you come across this ad and you go, that sounds good. Well, I do need to get gas, and they are right there on the right too, so I could pull off, I could get gas, and it's cheap, it's easy, it's convenient. I wouldn't even have to get out of the car. I could go through drive-through. It's a win-win. Yeah, I'll do it. Why not? They didn't say any of that. All they had to do was simply remind you that they exist, and immediately you self-justified it because it popped up. It became top of mind for you again, and you then made a decision on it. So they're making your subconscious beliefs become conscious. And once those beliefs become conscious again, those beliefs then affect your decision making. So what you need to do, is you're going to use the exact same strategy of posting. And millions of companies use this. That's really what the marketing and advertising industry is built on, is understanding human psychology, resurfacing beliefs, and influencing subconscious beliefs, and getting you to take action because of what is being shown to you. So how we're going to implement this is in posting for your networking. It's as simple as sending brief email updates in between conversations, or sending relevant and interesting articles that are somehow related to the person that you're sending it to, or any other type of message in between your conversations with someone. So you're staying in contact with someone in between your actual live conversations, whether it's a web or a video chat or a phone call or even a face-to-face getting coffee or drink with someone. And then what that's going to do by staying by posting people is you're going to stay top of mind. So your posting and your conversations with someone are frequent enough so that when something does pop up in that person's company or in that person's professional life. So for example, let's say you're staying in touch with someone, and I'm just going to use McDonald's as an example now because we've already talked about them. Let's say you want to work at McDonald's and you're reaching out, you're building relationships with people inside of the company. Well, maybe there's not a position available right now. That's okay. Because most of the things you want in life are not going to happen instantly because the opportunities haven't yet been created or don't yet exist. But what you're doing is you're planting the seeds and building the relationships so that when the opportunity does come up, when someone does quit the team or move to a different team, and all of a sudden there's a seat open, there's a position open that you want, the relationships that you have, when that happens on the team, immediately they go, oh my gosh, I know someone who would love to fill this position. That's you. And the only way that they're going to remember you when that opportunity arises is if you stay top of mind. If you're posting, if you're staying in touch, if you're having continuous conversations with them. Not keeping someone posted means you will miss opportunities. And I can promise you, you will absolutely miss opportunities if you don't stay top of mind with someone, if you're not staying in touch with someone and posting them. And again, I always use personal examples because they're so tangible and easy to understand. You're never going to date the guy or the girl who you don't talk to. Just like in professional, you're not going to get the opportunity that no one knows that you want, or they just completely forget about you. So you got to stay posted and you got to have more conversations with people. So posting is still a reference. So in terms of building the relationship, we talk about reference stacking, one on top of the other on top of the other, and confirming good beliefs about you and their impression about you. Posting is actually still building reference because what you're doing is you're doing the exact same thing that McDonald's was doing. So you're posting them. They're going to immediately see your name and your email and go, or your message and go, oh, I remember that person. But in order for them to remember you, they need to recall what they believe about you. So immediately they'll remember the first conversation and think, oh yeah, that was a great conversation. I really like that person. Well, immediately they're reconfirming the fact that they like you. And people help people who they know, like, and trust. So that simple post is actually further strengthening the relationship. And I know that sounds super subliminal and people are like, all right, does it really? Yes, it does, because that's how human psychology works. In order to remember someone, we need to recall what we believe about them. So there are 3 best ways to actually post somebody. The first way is to just simply send a progress update and share how you've taken their advice and how you've benefited from it. So usually in the first conversation that you have with someone, I always recommend asking for advice, because when someone gives you advice, that gives you the opportunity to prove to them that you're different from everyone else who they've talked to. So often people ask for advice and literally never take it. And that person feels like they wasted their time. Why further invest in somebody? Why would I have another conversation with someone if I gave them advice the first time and they just didn't take it? What a waste of time. So instead, what we want to do is we want to prove to them, hey, I took your advice. All of a sudden, they're going to, like you more, and they're also going to be much more willing to continue investing in the relationship, because they realize if they dedicate time to you, you're actually going to return on their investment, which is you're going to take their advice. So simple progress update is a phenomenal way to show them that you've benefited from them contributing to you. And then a second way to post somebody, and we've already talked about this also for following up with people if they haven't responded, but sending relevant and interesting information in between conversations. Awesome way to post. So it could be articles, it could be blogs, it could be news that's related to them, their position, their work, or even something non-professional. So let's say that in the first conversation, they talked about a hobby or a passion or something that they're super interested in, or some scientific discovery or something that they're captivated by. Something like that whether it's professional or non-professional and more personal to them, if you talked about in the first conversation, boom, awesome thing to send them in between phone calls or conversations. And again, you want to send them a brief summary as the body of the email and then include a link. And then the third way to post somebody is, again, send something relevant to the previous conversation or their interests. And so that third part this third way to post someone is really more so the personal side. So if someone mentioned that they're going skiing in, let's say, Colorado, well, what if you came across something relevant to skiing in Colorado and you thought, oh, this would be super helpful for that person because I know that they're going there. I'll send this their way. That's still a form of posting because they're still actively having to recall you. So keep the other person engaged by including one simple question in your email. Now, do you always have to include the one simple question? No, not always, but sometimes it's a good way to keep someone actively thinking about you and invested in the relationship. So now also, that question should not be super hard. It should be very, very simple for them to respond to within 30 seconds to a minute. The purpose is not to ask them some deep philosophical or difficult question to answer. Instead, it's just to keep them engaged in the relationship. So as an example, for a posting update, it could be something as simple as, "Hi, Emily. I hope all has been going well since we last talked. I have some good news for you. I've made some progress on," and then you update them on what progress you've made. So if they gave you advice or recommended a book or recommended that you reach out to somebody or recommended that you start reading something and learning more about something or developing yourself in some way or reaching out to additional people to continue networking, just keep them updated. Send them a progress update. How have you been doing? Have you done what they recommended? And then kind of the next part, so thank you again for that advice. I also wanted to ask if you'd be willing to share your thoughts on one question. So if you do want to include one simple question, and again, you don't need to always do this, but if you do want to include that question, you want to only have one very simple, specific question, and think of it as they should be able to answer the question in 30 to 60 seconds typing. It should not be a deeply intensive question because they're just not going to answer that via email. And if you do ask that and then they realize, oh, that's going to take a long time to answer, sometimes they just won't even respond in that case. So also for the posting emails, don't expect people to respond unless you have one simple small question. In that case, hopefully they do respond. But if you don't include a question, you might just send an update and say, hey, things are going well. Here's the progress that I made. Thanks again for your advice. They might just read that and go, cool, great, good for them. And then they move on with their day. That's okay. It's really that easy because what you did was you got them to recall what they believed about you. You strengthened the relationship. You're staying top of mind. Okay, so now the second form of posting is sending relevant information or an article. So, and this is really both the second and the third way of posting, because if it's the third way of posting, which is sending a relevant, personal thing based on the first conversation you had, and that was the skiing example, something like that, it's going to be very similar to this. So, "Hi, Emily, I hope all's been going well since we last talked. I came across," and then you want to plug in the article, the blog, etc., and thought you might find it interesting given, and then again, you explain why it's relevant to them. So this is an identical format to following up with someone who hasn't responded. And because if you remember from part 2, we talked about there are 2 different ways to follow up with someone who hasn't responded. One is to send them the standard follow-up message, or second, you can send them a relevant blog post or article or something related to them. And the example I'd given for that follow-up was the person who I'd worked with who was able to actually break into venture capital by sending posts until eventually the person responded. So this is also really good for posting people. And it's the exact same template. So hope all's been going well. We just talked about that. I've included the link in a quick summary below. Whatever you're sending them, don't just send them an article and expect them to read it. You want to summarize it in 3 to 5 key bullet points or summary bullet points, and then include the link to the actual article or blog post, whatever, on the bottom, and then best your name. Okay, so In terms of the second conversation, scheduling the second call with someone, what do you actually talk about? In order for someone to understand and justify getting on a call with you again, there needs to be a specific topic, because you've already kind of done the talk about the background, their life story, their career path, etc. You've already had that conversation. So now if you're going to have a second call or a third call or a fourth call, all of those sequential calls need to have a topic that's relevant to them and their experiences. And the reason it's relevant to them and their experiences is, so as an example, there was someone I was previously working with, and they had said that they'd reached out to a banker or several bankers, and none of them scheduled a second call. And I said, all right, well, what did you say that you wanted to discuss with them? And pretty much what he had sent out was that he wanted to discuss the investment banking climate and the future of the industry. Super broad. And because it was so broad, I'm willing to bet that the bankers who were receiving those emails said, I have better things to do than talk about the future of the industry, because there's a million and one ways that could go. I'm not the industry expert. It's not worth my time. I don't have the best say on that. That's not directly related to me. They can do research elsewhere and probably get a better answer. So instead, what you want to do is choose a topic that's directly relevant to their position, their work, their responsibilities, their beliefs, their experiences. People love to talk about themselves. So as long as they know that the topic is related to them and what they're currently involved with or doing or thinking about, they're a lot more willing to have that second call. So as an example of what that email could look like, or that message could look like when you're reaching out to ask for a second call, would be something along these lines. Hi, Emily. I hope all's well. I wanted to keep you posted as I've continued to make progress on. And then again, give them a quick progress update. So this is just a really simple, warm way to keep them involved. And the reason you're including this before the ask is you're reminding them, hey, you've invested in me so far and I have done what you've asked, or I've taken to heart and taken action on the advice or the recommendations that you've given me. So it's a very simple, brief progress update, just like the posting message. But then at the end, you want to include something along these lines. I've also been learning more about, that's where you introduce the topic, and I'd really like to ask you about, and then that's where you include a specific area of the topic that you know that person will have a unique or personal perspective on. People love to talk about their opinions, their perspectives, and their beliefs, or their experiences. So that's where you're tying the topic to them specifically, to their world, to their worldview, their personal experiences. Would you be willing to talk again for 20 to 30 minutes over the phone? Thank you again for all of your help so far. Best, your first name. So this has worked very, very well for the people that I've worked with. It's worked very well for me personally, and I'm sure that this will work very well for you as well. As long as the topic is specific enough and it is directly related to the person that you're reaching out to. All right, so now let's talk about cadence and the passage of time between when you're actually staying in touch with people. So what a cadence is it's a sequence of notes or chords comprising the close of a musical phrase. Now, how is that relevant? Well, music has melody. Melody has time signature. Time signature is, it's a method of reading spatial notes and when a note should be played. In marketing, in building relationships and reference building is very, very similar, if not identical. So within marketing, cadence is used to describe the sequence and frequency of messaging for a successful campaign. And so for your professional relationships, you're also going to want to follow a cadence. And the cadence is not overbearing. And what I mean by overbearing is you're not overwhelming someone. You're not trying to talk to someone every single week. Otherwise, you're going to burn the relationship out professionally, because in an intimate relationship, yes, you probably should talk to someone maybe every day or two or three. But in a professional networking relationship, you're not going to talk to someone that frequently. So what this looks like is you're going to have your first conversation, which is what we've already talked about, systematically reaching out, having and preparing for that first conversation. But then following the first conversation, you're going to want to wait about 2 weeks. And then you send a posting message, which we've just talked about. How do you go about sending and what do you send for that message? Then about 2 to 3 weeks later, you're going to want to ask for a second conversation. And then 2 to 3 weeks later, another posting message. And on you continue this cadence of every 2 to 3 weeks, sending either a posting message or trying to have a quick conversation with them, even if that's 15 to 30 minutes. So you're going conversation, posting message, conversation, posting message, conversation, and on. I know this sounds too easy to be true, but this is how you build strong professional relationships. And as you get to know someone even more, it might even go past 4 weeks. So maybe after you've known someone for half a year or even a quarter of a year, maybe you only reach out every 2 months, every 3 months. And then eventually, the reason this is so powerful is you're going to continue building a professional network that is extremely valuable. So yes, this professional network you're building is going to be super valuable for your immediate career transition now that you're focused on. But imagine the network of relationships that you'll have 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Even if you're just reaching out to people and staying in touch every 3 to 4 months, where that network will grow to over 2, 3, 5, 10 years is immense. And that value in your network, you're going to have value and access to resources and information that very, very, very few people will ever have access to. And if you want a competitive advantage, build your network like this. It will absolutely explode your professional value and your growth in your career. So the relationship must come first. Everything else comes second. Again, that's a principle that we talked about in part 1. Some people may be willing to offer help at the end of your first call. So going back to this, the reason we're staying in touch and posting and staying top of mind is because when an opportunity does pop up, someone will be willing to help us. They'll reach out and say, hey, this just came up. Send me a resume. Let's see what we can do. Well, that's awesome. Sometimes, literally after the first conversation, someone will say, so what's up? How can I help? What are you looking for? I like you. Well, that's awesome because that means that they feel comfortable with how you've presented yourself as a professional, literally in the first call. Some people feel that way. Most people don't. Most professionals are not going to be willing to offer help immediately on the first call. So you're going to need to build that relationship before they offer to help. So only after there's enough trust and rapport in the relationship will someone be willing to help and usually offer help. So where that falls for everybody is going to be different. Some people it's the first call. Some people it's literally after the second posting message. For some people, you need to have 3 or 4 conversations with them. It's totally different for every person. So now, assuming that you've built a relationship with someone, a professional relationship with someone, and you feel 80% ready to interview, and we'll talk about when you feel ready to interview. We'll talk about that in module 8. But here's how I recommend reaching out to someone to ask for help. So reaching out to a professional relationship that you've developed, and you're asking them for help in a process to try to get an interview. Something along these lines. Hi, Emily. I hope you've been doing well since we last connected. I wanted to update you that I plan to apply for the open blank position, so the open financial analyst position, for the open marketing manager position, etc., at their company or at company this week and hope to ask you for your advice. What do you believe is the best way to apply and pursue this position at company? I plan to reach out to several recruiters directly as well. Would you by chance know who would be the best person to reach out to? Any thoughts or help with this process would be greatly appreciated. If you're not in a position to share information on this, I completely understand that as well. Thanks again for all of your help so far and enjoy your day, the rest of the week, etc. Best, your first name. All right. This message I've critiqued and rewritten this thing hundreds of, maybe not hundreds, but so many times. The way that this is laid out is strategic. So in the very first part I hope you've been doing well since we last connected. I wanted to update you, etc. You're immediately telling them what's going on. You're saying this position is open at this company or at your company. I'm interested in it and I'm asking for your advice. Now, also notice you're not asking them specifically to do something for you. You're not saying, hey, would you be willing to forward my resume? Hey, would you be willing to connect me with a recruiter? All you're asking for is, I hope to ask you for your advice. What this means is you're creating the opportunity for them to offer to help you. People, that will make them feel so much better about it rather than just saying, yeah, I can help. It's them they feel like they're going out of their way because they know you, like you, and trust you. You've created the opportunity. You've expressed what you're interested in, what you want. You're asking for their advice. If they like you, they're going to respond with, hey, I'd be happy to help. If you forward me your resume, I'll see what I can do. They're offering to help you. A lot of people take away that opportunity from their relationships. Give them the opportunity to offer to help. Okay, so now the second part. What do you believe is the best way to apply and pursue this position at company? I plan to reach out to several recruiters, blah, blah, blah. Who, by chance, is the best person to reach out to? Again, this is just you expressing the intent that you're going to be reaching out to people anyways, and you're just asking, how would you recommend approaching this? Again, you're creating the opportunity for them to offer to help. And then the last part is any thoughts would be greatly appreciated, so expressing appreciation. Now, the next part, if you're not in a position to share information on this, I completely understand that as well. That is a very, very, very important part to never leave out. And that's because you're creating an out for them. If someone does not yet feel comfortable with forwarding you to a recruiter or referring you internally or kind of sticking their neck out for you, if they don't yet have that level of trust and rapport in the relationship, you're not killing the relationship because you're giving them an out. So if someone doesn't feel comfortable, they'll read this, they'll get back to you and say, hey, yeah, unfortunately, I'm really not in a position to be able to help with this, but I wish you all the best. You've still maintained the relationship. But if you don't include this out, if you take out that last part, they know that you're asking for help. But if they don't feel comfortable putting their own reputation on the line or sticking their neck out for you or referring you, well, they're not going to want to respond because they don't want to say no because then they just feel bad about it. So instead, they just ignore you and they ignore the email. Well, now they feel guilty about it. And the moment they associate either pain or guilt to you, to the relationship, it kills the relationship. All of a sudden they decide, yeah, I didn't help that person. And then maybe you follow up, 3 or 4 days later. Well, they're going to ignore that email too because they still feel guilty because they didn't want to help you. So that is super important. Give the person an out. If they don't want to help, that's okay. Give them an out. Allow them to say, hey, yeah, I'm really not in a position, but I wish you all the best. That's okay. You save the relationship. Continue building the relationship. They might be willing to help you later on. Or maybe they actually put you in touch with someone else, and maybe that person's outside of the company, but they still will help you in some way because they do want to help you. Okay, so now I want to show you kind of a summary sheet for the relationship building cadence and what that looks like. So I've summarized kind of what we just talked about in this video on the sheet. So you can see here the cadence for developing a professional relationship. You have your initial conversation, a thank you email, and then you wait 2 weeks. And then you want to send a posting email and wait 2 to 3 weeks before you do that. And then finally, after the 2 to 3 weeks after you've posted them, then you're reaching out to set up a second conversation with them. So it's really that simple. That is how you build and strengthen a professional relationship. And I want to, again, stress the 2 primary benefits of this. One, in the short term, you're going to stay top of mind. So when opportunities come up, people will think of you, reach out to you, and help you seize that opportunity. But the second long-term benefit is as you continue to build this professional network of strong relationships with people across different companies within the industry or within different industries, where that network will be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you will have a wealth of resource and value and information that probably less than 5% or 1% of people have. And that alone will skyrocket your career when you have a network of relationships like this. All right, so this is it for Module 7. In Module 8, we're going to dive into how do you actually go about creating your opportunities. There's 4 main channels that you can use to find and create job opportunities for yourself, career opportunities. So awesome work in Module number 7. Make sure you're kicking off your professional networking. You're systematizing, reaching out to 10 contacts every day, Monday through Friday. And then you're also keeping track of when do I need to follow up with people, and when do I also need to keep posting people and getting in touch again to ask for that second conversation. And in terms of systematizing the follow-ups, if people don't get back to you, and systematizing when to post and when to reach out to people to ask for a second conversation, use your calendar. Go 2 weeks ahead, go 3 weeks ahead. Create an entry in your calendar and say follow-ups, X, Y, and Z people. Posting message, X, Y, and Z people. So always make sure that you're putting in your calendar when you need to follow up with people. Awesome. All right. So thanks again for your focus on this. I know this Module 7 was a lot. In Module 8, we'll talk about creating the opportunities. I'll see you there.